Hey, Sam.
Yes, Bobby.
I'm having a hard time on the speaker. The mayor can still speak through the phone. And so if thanks everyone for allowing us to join. The mayor will join right now and share some thoughts. I'm going to go ahead and share my phone with the mayor.
Go
Well, hello, everybody. I think, can you guys hear me? You can hear
We
me
can
okay?
loud
Okay,
and clear.
I can barely hear you, so apologies for that. But um, uh, first of all, I just wanted to really thank Megan and Ramfi for giving me just a moment of your time this evening. And as you can tell, I'm calling you from the car. I actually wanted to be there in person, but tonight's also the Celebrate Trade event, which is a huge event here for our traded sector industries. And I'm actually doing the welcome. So I had to be two places at once. But what I wanted to say to you was how much I really appreciate the hard work you're doing on the Clean Energy Fund. And I want to acknowledge that the city of Portland could not have balanced its budget the way we have without your direct guidance and your leadership. And I really appreciate the fact that you were willing to work with Bobby and you were willing to work with Commissioner Rubio and other people on my staff to come up with what I think is a really good win-win solution for the community. What could have just been a bloodbath of a budget for us actually turned out to make some really good new key investments around the kinds of environmental actions that the Clean Energy Fund supports. We were really careful to make sure that everything we used was very explicitly supported by the ballot measure and the intention of the ballot measure. And I just thought this was a great partnership. And I don't always say that about everybody. And so I really just wanted to have this opportunity to tell you personally, not just as mayor, but just as Ted, that I really appreciate the work you guys did on the budget, the work you're doing in the community, and the improvements that you're going to be making going forward. So thank you.
Megan Ramphis.
Yeah, this is Rand Feast. I'll just respond here as a perspective here as a co-chair. One, I just want to appreciate your leadership and Commissioner Rubio's leadership and Bobby's leadership on this. I think for when it comes to the Portland Clean Energy Fund, for the committee, one, first and foremost, has been really important to one, protect the integrity of the program, two, ensure this is not referred to the ballot, and three, every step of the way, we are ensuring that the committee is being consulted. And so I think I just want to recognize just the standard being set in terms of how we collaborate, how we partner, that I think sets a standard for every new office holder, moving forward. So I wanted to appreciate that. I do want to recognize that for this committee, it's been a challenge how we move and tackle these issues together. But I think we found some common ground solutions, and we're thankful that we are going to review a RFP this summer promoting collaborations between community and government. So I think there are things there to be appreciated. But I think lastly, just want to appreciate, the opportunity here to shine a light for the Portland Clean Energy Fund and how it's being a solution for how the city rebuilds and moves forward. And I think that is something to celebrate. And I think you did a good job of articulating that in the release of the budget. And so just want to share appreciation there while acknowledging, recognizing some of the challenges to get here. But I think, I think to your words, I don't think we would be here without doing some of that collaboration and partnership. So I'll pause there and give Megan some space also to respond.
Thanks, Ramfi.
Yeah, thanks, Ranfees, and hi, Mayor Wheeler. I mean, Ranfees covered it pretty well, so I'll just say, yeah, I appreciate you acknowledging us. I do think the committee, we struggled with some of the pressure on us. I think it's great PCEF was there thanks to the visionaries who created PCEF and passed it. it's great. It's been there to help the city budget, but that is not our top mission. And we got a lot of pushback from community on sort of that sentiment that communities like that's not what PCEF was passed for. It was to benefit community first and foremost. So we are playing an interesting line here as the PCEF committee of both kind of keeping the integrity and the attention to PCEF priority populations and community at the forefront, and recognizing that the city, we need the city to lead and do stuff on climate action if we're going to achieve kind of the goals of a more climate equitable community. And we also, you know, we all live and work in Portland and understand the budget challenges that we're faced. So I think we rose to the occasion. And I think, you know, but I think as a committee, we'll keep standing for the community vision and priority communities. And I don't think we see PCEF as the forever savior of the city budget.
No, and Megan, I want to acknowledge that. I should have said that right in my comments up front. I acknowledge that this puts you in, and your colleagues, all of you on the committee, in a challenging place, because I was certainly getting some of the feedback that you were getting. And there was this middle ground. And I feel like we found the middle ground. And the middle ground is, as you say and Ramfi says, is we don't want this. I think it would be a tragedy to have this go back for a referral, because people are just angry and edgy, and anything that looks anti-establishment is what's going to happen right now. And so we don't want it to go back to the ballot. It's really the greatest opportunity we have as a community to invest in the kinds of things that the committee had intended around climate action and climate justice. We don't really have another source. So it's critically important that it stay in place. And it was important that, from my perspective at least, that we find a strategy that allowed us to not eviscerate the city budget while at the same time the Clean Energy Fund appeared to be thriving. We found a middle ground. Now, will this middle ground work next year? I don't know. And that's part of the discussion that we're going to have is going forward. What are the brackets? What are the parameters? Where do you want to be? Where does the city want to be? And how do we get there together? And so what I will pledge to is I'm available to you anytime. I know Bobby is very passionate about the work that you do. He's available anytime. And we are going to be having an evaluation of our budget process, since we're moving from the way we do it today to the way the new council and the new mayor are going to be doing it under the new form of government. And so I think your feedback is going to be really important to that process. And so, Bobby, let's make sure they get looped into that process as well. Not that you don't have enough on your plate. I know you do. But at any rate, hey, thank you. And thanks for giving me this few minutes just to be able to thank you. And it's lame. I really wish I could do more, throw you a party, bake you a cake or something else. But I really do appreciate you personally. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler.
Thank you.
All right, Bobby, have a good evening. All right, folks, let's jump into our regular meeting with that. We are in, and we should tally up the numbers. If we looked at the numbers, we've gone well past hundreds of 100 meetings, but May 16th and our May 16th committee meeting. Tracy won't be with us tonight because she's sick, so I'm writing this one alone, but I think we've got you covered here. So we're gonna start a little bit later here, but as folks know, our committee meetings are open to the public. We'll try to keep to our break at 7 p.m. and online participants will see that there's a break screen at that point in time. Our chat box here will be open for folks that are joining to just introduce yourselves, as well as to note your interest in providing public comments. So if you're interested in doing that, please note that via the chat box so that we can track that as we get there later. Committee members, feel free to use the raise hand function, but that is going to be limited to committee members and presenters. Videos on, ideally for committee members, we ask that members of the public keep your videos off, but for committee members it's optional. And then microphone, members of the public, please keep them muted. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed. And for those of you that need captioning, we do our captioner here. You can just go to your settings and click show subtitles. All right. So again, we're starting a little bit late, but let's jump into we'll go over just quickly do the overview of the agenda, then we'll do introductions. But we'll kick off in public comment in a little bit. We'll then get to meeting minutes, where we'll approve meeting minutes. It's an action item in that we're trying to catch you all up. It's been a minute. No pun intended. And then I'll provide some general program updates. We'll then move into just providing a high-level review of the process for reviewing the LOIs, letters of interest for the Collaborating for Climate Action funding opportunity. Then I know at the request of our co-chairs, we'll have a discussion on some of the proposed code amendments related to the fund interest and committee consultation. We'll then have a break. We'll come back, and then importantly, we'll get to give you a preview of our dashboard, which this has been, this is really our phase one, but we'll tee that up with our data analyst, Vanya Fong, at around 7:10, and then spend the remaining of our time on that before we close out the meeting. So first, just to start with introductions, I'm going to go and call folks around on the screen as I see them, and then I'll also call on staff that may have a role in the meeting tonight. Let's start with committee members. Megan.
Hi, folks. Megan Horst, co-chair, committee member, she, her pronouns.
Okay. Ramfis.
Hi, everyone. Ramfis, Genetino, Viatoro, he, him, committee member.
Thank you. Paul.
Good evening, Paul Lumley, he, him pronouns, committee member. Nice to see you all.
Welcome. Maria.
Hello, Maria Sippin, they or she pronouns, PCEF committee member.
Cool. Faith.
Hi there, so great to see you all. Faith Graham, committee member.
Good to see you again today, Faith. D'Angelo.
Good evening, everybody. D'Angelo Moaning, committee member. Glad to be here.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, D'Angelo. Robin.
Oh, hello. No problems with my mute. Good evening, Robin Wine, committee member, he, him.
Okay, and let's. I'm going to go ahead and give Eric a chance to introduce himself, because Eric is going to be a new face for you all. Eric, please introduce yourself. Eric is our interim BPS director.
Hey, everyone. I think I've met some of you, but definitely not all of you. As Director Oliveira steps into a new role as the Deputy City Administrator for our service area, I'm stepping in as interim director for BPS. So you'll probably be seeing a little bit more of me, and I'm happy to be here. My door is open, so if anyone wants to chat me up or grab a coffee, I'm more than happy to do that. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Eric. And then let's go to Rachel, and then James, and then I don't know, and then let's go to Elizabeth, and we'll do just those introductions on our side.
Hi, everyone. Rachel Gilmore, she, her pronouns, PCEF staff.
Everybody, great to see you tonight. James Valdez, he, him pronouns, PCEF staff.
Hello, everyone. Elizabeth Stover, she, her, PCEF staff.
All right. Thank you all. Okay. So I'm going to just check. I'm not tracking my chats, but let's see. Is there anyone this evening that is interested in providing any public comment? Please indicate your interest if you're interested in doing so via chat. Okay. We've got Babs. Go for it. Unmute yourself and feel free to turn on your video. You've got 3 minutes, please.
Oh my goodness. I didn't think I was going to go first. Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Well, first of all, I tuned in just as Mayor Wheeler was speaking. And I've been worried since the city council meeting ended this afternoon that somehow, some way, the PCEF would be referred to the ballot. And so I was relieved to hear Mayor Wheeler make that statement. I heard him correctly, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then I'm kind of messed up this afternoon, technically challenged senior here. So when they first called on me, I couldn't testify emailed the council clerk and then was able to testify. And even though I kind of stumbled over my words this afternoon, I then found out that the meeting next week on the 22nd, which will be the second hearing, that there won't be public testimony. You're nodding, Sam, so that's correct. And so I was thrilled that I managed to stumble out what I wanted to say today. So thank you all. Am I done?
No, keep going, Babs.
Okay, thank you all. You know, I've Zoomed in numerous times, and that was one piece that I kind of forgot in my testimony this afternoon to comment on how involved I've been, but it didn't really matter, right? So thank you again for letting me speak. What I would have said is in all these meetings that I've attended over this last year or so, I'm continually inspired and impressed by all of you. Your commitment, your dedication, your doggedness, the hours and hours of time you've all put in on this, and getting us to the point where you've submitted your first two proposals. So I will continue to follow you and support you and talk with anyone who will listen to me about your work and asking them to also support you. Thank you all. Okay.
Thank you, Babs. And for reference for committee members, Babs was referencing earlier today, we were at City Council, which I'll preview to for the first reading of Strategic Program 3, our clean energy and single family homes, the largest of our strategic programs within the climate investment plan. That was before City Council get authorization to go out for an RFP, and Babs had the fortune to provide testimony then. Or we had the fortune to have Babs testimony then. So that was the reference there. Okay. Well, seeing no other comments, let's move into our first item.
Hey, Sam.
Reference, yes.
Yeah, I just want to, given
Please.
Babs' testimony, just want to affirm Babs. I think the committee values your testimony just like we value the testimony of many who come and show up. So just want to know, hey, your testimony is important. We are listening, and it's always appreciated to hear you, in addition to the broader public, when they show up. So it definitely influences how we think and how we are held accountable to the community. So thank you for taking the time to testify.
Appreciate that.
All right. So first up here is we've had, and this has been, we've had some catch up to do on our meeting minutes. And so just appreciate Rachel for constantly saying we've got to catch the committee up on some minutes. But we sent you all earlier this week a set of 4 meeting minutes from November 16th all the way to February 2nd. And we're going to do this in 2 batches. So the next meeting we'll catch you all up with the remainder. But we wanted to see, 1, if you all had a chance to review those, 2, if you had any edits, and then 3, if no edits or whatever else, whether there'd be someone that'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes so we can get them finalized and posted.
I shall make a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Well, then let's just go around really quickly and just I'll call the roll on this so we can approve the meeting minutes. I always start again, even though there's a motion in second, but Megan.
I approve again.
Thank you. Maria.
I approve.
Okay, Paul.
Oh, what were the vote options again? It was approved.
It is approved, stand aside, or it is not approved.
I actually have not read the minutes. I'm going to stand aside.
Okay, thank you. Noted. Ramphis.
Approve.
Faith.
I approve.
Robin.
Approve.
D'Angelo.
Approve.
Okay, I think I'm looking through my screen. I think we've got you all. Okay, so with that, motion is passed and we will get the meeting minutes posted. Thank you all. Appreciate just that housekeeping.
Hey, Sam, given that Paul did not review, if in the course of Paul reviewing the notes and wants to make changes, would that just come back to us just to incorporate those changes?
That's exactly right, Paul. Let us know if that's the case. We'll bring that grant fees to you and Megan, and then we'll just put it right back on the agenda. Correct.
Thank you, and I apologize for not having the time to read the minutes, but I will read them.
Thank you, Paul. All right. So next up, I just wanted to give you all just some just broad set of updates. First, it's that we're, our scoring panel meetings. So for RFP3 begin really next week. So all of the initial scoring from our scoring panels have occurred. All the applicants have received their initial scores and had an opportunity to respond to their initial scores, as well as clarifying questions. And now the scoring panels are coming back together to review those responses as part of a full panel. And so those begin next week, and those will go through June 7th. So we're getting a little bit closer and closer ultimately to heading to council. We anticipate heading to council with the RFP3 community responsive grant sometime in July or early August. And so we're just humming along there. And it's been, I'd say, a significant lift on staff time in terms of just going through all of that review, as well as all the reviewers. Thank you, Robin, Alicia, as well on the committee. And now we're moving into that next phase where we're getting the groups together to discuss those and get to that next step. So still chugging along this, and I think it's been certainly an exciting part, but also it's nice to get to the other side where we get to come together and discuss those. Another just significant update is that we've been doing significant amounts of staff recruitment, as if folks have seen, and we'll make sure we get this out to you all. But we currently have out there I want to say we've got 4 or 5 positions posted, and of one of them is to fill 6 project manager roles on the team. So we'll be, as part of the recruitments we have on the street, so to speak, right now, we'll be filling about 10 positions on the team, and we're currently in the process of closing out 2 recruitments. So in a short period of time, we'll bring on about 10 to 12 additional folks, but those will still be staggered, as it's just going to take some time to work through those. Notably, so really just encourage, and we'll make sure you all see those, and I'll just call them out. We have, and I'll circle back to one of them. We have our deputy program manager recruitment out right now. We have an external affairs manager recruitment out. We have a senior communications strategist recruitment out. We have a communications strategist recruitment out, and we have 6 project manager recruitments that are out right now. And we're on the tail end of our workforce and contractor equity policy manager recruitment, as well as our clean energy program lead recruitments. And so one of those recruitments, as you all heard, was our deputy program manager. This is Katie's position. So Katie is slowly winding down with us. And this is more, I think many of you all have known this, but Katie moved back to Alaska earlier this year as part of going back to roots and a few other things. But we will do a big celebration for her in the afternoon or evening of June 25th. And we'll make sure you all get that information just to acknowledge her when she's back in Portland. But she's slowly winding down on the team. And it's so there's both, I would say there's a healthy bit of, we're teasing out and dividing the work, given that Katie carried a vast majority of the work, but she's certainly still on RFP3 and carrying that home till the end. But just wanted to acknowledge that, and we'll have a moment to celebrate Katie in a little bit, and that'll be on June 25th. So please mark your calendars. That'll be the evening of June 25th. And then the last piece is obviously you heard from the mayor earlier in terms of just the budget cycle. There's certainly been a lot of work that's entailed, and there is going to be an aftermath of that work in terms of teasing out how do we do that better. We certainly came into the fold on the budget cycle, and no doubt a certain part of that chaos is driven by the fact that we entered into what is, as the mayor noted, a fairly precarious budget. And so the timing, the approach, how we entered it is certainly less than ideal. And we've taken a lot of lessons learned. And so that's wrapping up. That's consumed a significant amount of energy. And where we're pivoting to now is diving back into what we're calling them City Climate Projects 2024. This was that allocation made in early February. And so we're going to be working on a June date where we bring those back to you all. But we're looking at timelines here, and it's going to be we're going to be challenged, but we'll be bringing those back to you all in terms of what the scopes are, detailed outcomes and measures so that you all can have an opportunity to provide input on that. But I just want to acknowledge that that in and of itself is going slower than we had anticipated, in part due to just the range of juggling we've been doing and responding to the budget and a whole host of other pieces of work. So I think that's the primary updates. I want to pause before moving on and see if there are any questions from the committee before we move into talking about what next would be the review process for the our letters of interest. Okay. Okay. So as you all know, we've had our Collaborative for Climate Action funding opportunity out on the streets. And so this has certainly been for us, you know, it certainly came about as a result of the surplus funds and the balance of funds remaining. And we've gathered a whole host of notes around what this can look like for next time. But, you know, at a high level, just to reiterate for the public, this is, you know, intended to fund high impact multi-stakeholder projects and collaborations. Total anticipated award is going to be about 158 million. The city economist projection did not change in April. And the funding requests are going to be, again, between 20 and 100 million per application. Projects must be wrapped up by 2029. And, you know, it's a two-stage process with this first stage closing out tomorrow. So we've already got a few applications in. And at this point, we're expecting a healthy number of additional applications. And so we're going to have to sit down with that volume and tease out what that looks like in terms of whether we need to modify our review process. But again, and we're calling in applications led by nonprofit organizations or government entities with co-applicants. So we've been fielding just a healthy number of questions, discussions, exchanges revolving around this. I think it's going to be something that'll certainly inform the way future CIPs are written and future funding applications are set up in this vein. But I think I don't want to call it just yet until we get to tomorrow. What I did want to just kind of walk you all through is on the other side of this, what we will essentially be doing is we will be tapping, you know, BPS staff, climate policy staff, planning staff in order to do the initial phase, which will be the eligibility and technical feasibility review. So this is just making sure, can the projects as proposed happen? Can they happen by 2029? Are they, you know, greenhouse gas emissions reductions projects, et cetera? So we'll be going through that initial phase of eligibility and technical review. And then we will bring it to a scoring panel. And I want to say just thank you, to first Megan, Maria, and Ramfis for volunteering to be on the scoring panel alongside staff. And then we're going to bring those over to the PCEF committee to forward a recommendation on inviting 6 to 8 proposals to submit full applications with an expectation of a due date around mid-July. So we're working through that. And I think in some ways, until we landed, I think the outstanding question for us is sincerely just the volume of applications. I think we were initially internally expecting somewhere in the range of 12 to 18 or so applications. There's a good chance that we may get a good bit more than that. And if that's the case, we're just going to have to take a two-stage process like we did the scoring panels. And so we'll circle back with folks once we come back to see what are the number of applications once we get to next Monday. And those will close out tomorrow and we'll review those. But come Monday, we'll give you all initial pulse of how many applications we received and what to expect on the review process. But that's just a quick overview on that review process. Maria.
For the applicants who get invited to submit full proposals, do we reveal that list of invited applicants to the public at that time? Or how do we communicate that step?
We did. This is going to be a decision of the full committee. So we will forward that recommendation to you all, and you all will have an opportunity to discuss and deliberate that. And that will be public in terms of noting sort of these are the applicants that we're going to call in for full proposals. Correct, Maria. I think the outstanding question for us is, I think we've been clear with folks that have reached out around the kind of information we need to see to understand it, recognizing that there is going to be elements of proposals that we know this already, that there can be elements of proposals folks will submit that are not going to be eligible, or that in part may not make sense, or you want to see something, lean into something else. We know that there's a good chance that you're going to see proposals in many different parts that are going to, singular proposals that'll be near 100 million. And I think what we've already been communicating to folks is just, given the volume of applications that we're seeing, that we've already been communicating to folks that it's going to be very competitive, and to make sure that they give us enough details in their proposals so we can understand each of them and ultimately figure out whether we want to pick different parts of proposals. All right. So it'll be, I think the main piece maybe it is just to set the expectation is we expect there to be, we're hoping that we've got enough information within the applications that we can be able to make those decisions to come up with a package of 6 to 8, that we're calling in for full proposals. Then that's going to happen likely around the week of June 10th or June 17th. The question mark again is how many proposals come in and whether that delays the review. And then I think the secondary opportunity will be really when we're right sizing these at the end to select the full proposals to line them with that 158 million that's available in funding. So that'll be another opportunity where we're sort of going to be massaging them to figure out how do we get to a package that makes sense. But needless to say, I think one, we're certainly seeing a lot of collaboration, a lot of folks reaching out, and a lot of connections being made. And we've had certainly a lot of folks say, hey, can PCEF host more spaces for sort of those connections to be made? And that's something that we've heard consistently. And it's something now that we've got on, actually you'll meet some of our new staff soon. Folks like Wendy Serrano, who's recently joined us from the Portland Bureau of Transportation as our community engagement equity manager. Those are some of the conversations we're having with them around how do we start, as we bolster up, how do we start facilitating more of those opportunities? All right. Well then, I think if there's no questions there, I'll see and I'll linger and see if there's a pause. What we'll do is move to the next part of the agenda. Megan.
Well, just thinking about that point you just made, Sam, about having more staff capacity to do convening to help collaborations. Do you mean for the full proposal development? Because after this one, we don't necessarily have another big grant. I mean, we all have our community-based responsive grant round coming up after that, but I guess I just trying to understand for what.
It wouldn't be for the, yeah, you're correct. It's not for the full proposal. It's really that it's a consistent desire, and we've tried to structure it in different ways, certainly even during our community responsive grants. How do we create the right sort of space for folks to convene and make connections? And sometimes you have the right design and orientation around an event to have that happen in a way that really works, that gets those connections and those sparks to happen. And oftentimes we find that it's really valuable to do it really close to an RFP, as folks know that it's coming up and there's a little less pressure, but to also design it in a way that keeps people engaged so that they're coming out for a reason. So it's something that we sort of acknowledge. People asked for it in this window, in this 6-week window where we're out for the requesting LOIs, letters of interest. And we said, sorry, we can't do that, but please, see each other in this Zoom space. That was the extent of it, but it's just an acknowledgement that we know that it's something we're gonna, now that as we have more resources, we're gonna be thinking more thoughtfully around how to do more of those as we at least gear up around future opportunities, which most relevant is our community responsive grants.
Hey, Sam, I'll chime in here. I think this is a good time for the committee to just ask questions here, just make sure as we move forward. But just to clarify, given that I don't think it's reflected here, sorry if I missed it, but I'm assuming on each of these steps where we'll ultimately land is at some point the committee will the full committee will get to review and vote before anything gets recommended to council. So just want to at least clarify that piece.
Correct.
As we go through these steps. So just want to clarify that with you and with the committee. And yeah, anyway, just want to just encourage other questions, but sounds like yes.
Correct. Let me maybe be very clear about that. Both after the scoring panel reviews, scoring panel will make a recommendation to the full committee around around proposals to call in for letters of interest proposals to call in for full proposals. We'll then call those in. The full committee will take action. Then we'll say, congratulations, folks. We want full proposals from these organizations, these proposals. And then those proposals will have about another 5 weeks to develop their full proposals. Those will then come back to the committee at that point, and we'll have a review on them. And the full committee, again, will be responsible for making a recommendation on the full proposals that'll advance as a recommendation to City Council. So two touch points from the committee. Paul, and then Robin afterwards.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to thank the volunteers on the panel for all the work they're going to do. It's going to be a lot of work. And I was curious if, as a committee, we'll be informed of not just those that are recommended for advancing, but all applicants?
Yes, we'll let you know that.
Thank you.
Robin.
I think I forgot my question. Oh, for the full proposals, is that going to be similar to a community responsive grant, or is it going to be a different kind of application?
Similar but different. There's a few questions that'll just be a little bit less relevant, but a lot of the same attributes. And it's in some ways actually very similar to the letters of interest and the specific fields and information we're calling for there. It's just going to be more detail. We're going to want to understand at that point. And so I'm happy to send the letters of interest around so folks can see the specific information we're asking there. But it models off a lot of the same type of questions that are in our community responsive grants. It's just, as opposed to asking, there's a little bit more again around the collaboration and the partnerships. So there's more questions in that realm. And I think that's the primary difference. There's a couple more differences. Yeah, but we're still talking about co-benefits, still talking about emissions reductions, priority populations. Those are still the same relevant questions. Any more questions? Okay. Well, I'm going to move into this next piece, and I'll go ahead and I've got one slide here, and I'm going to turn it then just to, maybe I'll turn it, I know this next section here, I want to turn it to Ramfis and Megan to walk the committee through this. I know, and I've got Ramfis and Megan, just for you both, I've got on the next slide the two proposed code amendments that have been discussed and raised.
Thanks, Sam. I can tag team this here with Megan. I think just to be, I think, pretty clear and transparent for folks. I think the announcement of the budget and clarity now and transparency that there will be PCEF interest to be utilized to meet the budget. We have understood that will require a code amendment. So we have asked and we have received clarity on the language of what that code will be. Until now, we've been told, hey, it's a one-time thing, but we've asked, hey, it's important for the committee to be able to review what is that code language amendment, just to verify it's one-time use. So the language that you see in bullet point number 1 is the language as we understand it at this moment that is currently drafted by the city attorney's office. We don't know officially yet the date of when this amendment would take a vote, but I think we have a sense that it's likely in June or mid-June. So I think we want to, 1, make sure, 2, for transparency's sake, the full committee gets to review and see this language. I don't think there's an expectation to vote on the language. Like, I think this is moving on the council end, so I want to be transparent on that. Second piece, I think one important theme that's been really important as Megan and I have interfaced with city council members and the mayor's office has been, it's really important that the city consults with us. So it's really clear in the code language that all code that this committee has the power to make code recommendations. In making code recommendations, I think we feel like it's inherent, but it's been missed that how council consults with committee when it's city council initiated, I think is really important to make sure, hey, one, that we are being consulted. I know I use the language consultation, so that has higher and deep meaning for many folks. And I know Paul has thoughts on the word consultation that has a higher meaning for tribal nations, but I think I wanted to at least offer an opportunity for the committee, knowing that council will be taking a vote on a code amendment, that we at least ensure and that we enshrine that in some way, shape, or form, council does take a moment to consult with the Portland Clean Energy Fund before any code changes. And I think the goal here is to build on what has been what we believe is a standard practice and good practice to do. And I think the hope is that it has some meaning. So I've offered language here where the word consult means that it includes a public meeting with at least 48 hours notice, open for public comments, and that includes committee deliberations and allows us to provide a recommendation to council. And so I just want to be clear, like, I don't think there's an expectation today for us to take a vote on this language, but I do have an expectation, like, for folks to review, offer their feedback. This is not meant to be take it or leave it, but what I will say is we have shared this language just to share, like, that intent to the mayor's office. So it is important that, one, we do get something drafted in a timely manner. And ideally that it coincides with the code amendment for the PCEF interest. So we have made that ask. So I'll look to you all as committee members. Again, love to get your temperature check on this. And if there's any revisions needed. The only caveat here that I'll note is, which I think is often the case, as we interface with any sort of legislative council or, say, city attorney's office, like, we will provide the language, they might spit out something different. So just want to at least be transparent there. It's not always 100% like what I'm providing here or what we ultimately provide will be 100% in our words, but I think the intent will be captured in some way or shape or form. So I do want to just put a finer point on that, just to be on the same page. So I'll pause there. Megan, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say or add, just as we sort of think about just what's being proposed from council and where I think there's an opportunity for us to propose and make a recommendation to council to better, again, enshrine, I think, what would be good practice moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, Ranpeace, for introducing that, and for Ranpeace for sort of tracking all of this. Honestly, City Council did not come to us and alert us. They were planning to use interest. Ranpeace just had his ear to the ground to a degree. So I think that this is we're trying to be pragmatic here and like respond to the moment, but then also set in something that means we are consulted for future anything that PCEF that's PCEF significant. So yeah, a little bit of procedural context, which I'm not sure you touched on, Sam or Ranpeace, is that, correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but I think City Council is poised to vote on on point 1 on June 15th or something like that.
My understanding is it probably happen sometime close to mid-June. It'll sometime close to mid-June. I don't know the exact time frame.
So to Renfie's kind of point, like we as a committee have established a practice which we don't introduce something and then vote on it in the same meeting. That's just not good practice. So I think, but the ball is moving outside of us. So I think we wanted to introduce it today, get feedback, workshop it, leave you time to think about it. But given that the June 15th deadline, we may have to do like a lunchtime vote sometime before June 5th, in the days leading up to June 15th. So that's just kind of a procedural comment about how we feel about it. And then, Ravi, I didn't think about this earlier, but a little small thing is request feels very soft to me. So it's a small comment. Request sounds, optional. We request that. It should just, like, I would just say City Council shall or something. But maybe the lawyer will have thoughts on that.
Thanks for catching that. It's meant to be shall. So appreciate you catching that.
Paul. Couple of questions. One of them, I'm just curious how much interest we're talking about. Does anybody have that number? And then I appreciate the language here that's on the screen. There was also an email I received today or yesterday that had an attached document that has different language. So is that document with the red line added? Is that city proposed language? Is that what that is?
That's my understanding, correct.
Okay, got it. So does anybody have the number? I'm just kind of curious how much money we're talking about.
My understanding, Paul, is I think it's around 7.6 million.
Great. Okay, thank you.
It is in the mayor's, but I can dig it up, but it's around there.
Okay, thank you.
Faith and then Maria.
I think I've voiced this concern, so I don't need to belabor it in small groups. But I guess I want from Ranfis and Megan an understanding of the objective of this. Is this the idea that actually community, because it will be at a PCEF public meeting, gets an opportunity to see behind the veil before any changes are suggested? And in which case, I think it's fantastic. Otherwise, I'm not sure that there's much bite to this bark. But if that's really the intent that we're going for, is just to daylight machinations that are happening at City Council with PCEF code, then I'll stand down.
Yeah, I'll answer that. I think that is right. That's the intent. I think it is oftentimes when we hear of a potential code change, we're often hearing about it in the news. And I think sometimes what we're trying to often do is a few things, try to triangulate. One, what's the basis, and then two, is there community support? Has there been community conversations? So I think in doing this, it is very much one, in making sure, hey, we get the chance to understand what's being proposed, have a chance for us to hear from the public, and to be able to deliberate. So I think it's just like I think learning about the interest rate, code change, it was really important to get a temperature check from community, making sure that there were conversations about this. So I think again, this is again, the goal is to enshrine that good practice. And I think, yes, that is the intent.
Thank you, Ramfis. Maria.
Can you further clarify the sequencing of the actions here? The code amendment to include this use of PCEF interest, is this required for City Council to finalize and pass the budget in June?
My understanding, Maria, is correct. That is required.
Okay. And with the sequencing of these actions too, given that Donnie and Sam made an excellent presentation this week outlining the roles of the committee and City Council, would this action emerge then as a recommendation that the committee is making, like the code change is a committee initiated recommendation that goes to council?
There's sort of two paths that code changes can head to council, right? So they can head to council as a committee recommendation, and they can head to council by being introduced by, there's some pieces of it by council members. And so this would be, so if there's a piece you desire to recommend, you all have that avenue. But my understanding is, I'll stop there.
Okay. I know the committee has always wanted to create clarity and sideboards around like how PCEF funds are being used moving forward. I wanted some help understanding that red text in the document that Paul brought up. And I don't know if you have it ready on the screen, but there was some words in the paragraph, particularly the word notwithstanding and what that means in relation to the subsections it's referring to. It sounds quite permissive to me and just really broad and expansive. So can someone really spell that out, what that means? Because my first read is that city council's allocations city council's power to allocate the use of that interest, it seems like a whole bunch of power that they get once we make this amendment.
So one, I think Marie, what we can do is have our city attorney in either smaller groups or in an executive session walk through that. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to try to explain that language just because it's not my language, and it's not something that I've understood or tracked in that way. So, but I think just to maybe be clear, yes, right now the interest in this instance is being pulled to the general fund. So just to be clear around the current use of the interest.
And for anyone's understanding, for anyone who's been in more conversations about this, does that mean that the use of the PCEF interest does not have to necessarily apply to climate related projects?
Correct. That is my understanding. Paul, and then Maria. Okay, so you're muted. Okay, Paul, and then Megan.
Yeah, Maria, that's the way I read it when I read the notwithstanding language. It's releasing them from having to use the interest income for anything related to PCEF. It would go to the general fund, and I believe that is their desire. And the way I understand it is that in order for them to present a successfully balanced budget this year, that it requires this kind of a code change in use of the funds as general funds. Yeah, Sam, did I capture that correctly?
I think that's correct, Paul.
Okay.
Thank you. Megan.
Yeah, mine's not exactly a question, but I'm glad this was aired and daylighted. I suspect many of us committee members, we don't love that idea because we're stewards of PCEF to advance the mission of PCEF. And this is a gray area zone because the interest is not really clearly in our domain and it wasn't super spelled out. Yeah, so that's just really a point that I have frustrations around, but it feels like it's a little out of our nexus power. If somebody else sees that differently, let me know. As I understand it, one of the pushbacks to the idea was that it could establish some sort of door opening both for future interest of PCEF, but also interest in a bunch of other funds. So I'm curious why that concern is not stopping this from happening. Do you have any insight into that, Sam?
What I would just say is that any future council can take that same action and propose a code amendment to take the interest again. It's subject to the next council. Obviously, this is when we're in budgeting. We're in the budget cycle now and going through the budgeting process. But as it's written, as it's drafted, it is 1 year. But there is nothing to stop a future council from wanting to take that action other than the product of the body as a whole. So they would have to take another they would have to take another action on the code in order to take it for another year. This action limits it to this particular budget year, but
Yes, which was a good win and like a good narrowing in my mind.
Paul.
So the way I read this is all of the interest income that's been earned so far, not just in this particular fiscal year. So if they wanted to come after the interest income again next year, there probably would be a lot less. And also, as a new form of city government, so there's going to be a completely different body who knows what's going to be in store for all of us. I believe it was Maria that was asking some questions earlier about what a process might look like if this committee submitted our own code change language, and we could, just thinking out loud, we could take some of their language and add in some of ours that refers to requirement to consult with us in the future before they do any future code changes. Because I think that's something that would be a desire for this committee moving forward. I sort of like the idea of presenting something to them. Of course, we'd want to have communications along the way. They certainly have the prerogative to just say thank you, but no thank you. But at least I think we should give it a shot. So if this committee is interested in exploring that, I'd be willing to participate in those conversations.
Sorry, and just to clarify, Paul, you mean language separate from what's in bullet point 2? Or in addition to?
Oh, in addition to, I would combine them with the city language, because the city language that we received, the red line, I didn't see a reference in there to consultation with the committee. So we would take some of their language and some of our language, sort of bring them together.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for that clarity. And I think that's the intent, is to bring those two together.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm happy to work with you on that.
I will say though that like Megan, I'm not thrilled that these funds would be used for something that's not the original intent of the voters, but interest income is something different. And I've sat on other foundations with interest income, and it does present an interesting opportunity for organizations to use funding that it was not necessarily intended. But like Megan, I am frustrated a little bit, and I believe that anybody from the community who really wants to protect the Portland Clean Energy Fund would also have some of those same concerns. So I just want to put it out there that I'm not comfortable with it, but if this is going to happen one way or the other, I'm interested in pursuing a process that has some preservation in the future for how we use these funds and protect it from code changes that we may not like.
Maria. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, co-chairs, for bringing this to us and not expecting a vote tonight. Like, a lot of situations that we rose to the occasion for. I know this is another one of those things, and this team really appreciates having to deliberate more and not feeling rushed. I know even not all PCEF advocates and those who say protect PCEF agree on like one stance around interest. I know there's lots of diverse viewpoints around that, and I want to explore further what the consequences are of approving this type of code amendment with the initial language that was presented to us here, and to be able to see more clearly what this could provide in terms of a benefit to the city, a benefit to the populations we serve, the priority populations we serve, and what kind of risks there are. I would certainly appreciate more visits from the city attorney and anyone who can help us see really clearly what the consequences are of this, and to help us come to a comfortable point where we can accept code amendments as it is, or really inject the language that we feel would do justice to PCEF today and long term.
Ramphis.
Yeah, I appreciate, I think, this conversation, and I think all the things, folks have raised so far, and I do want to hear from everyone. I think they're really good and valid, and I think, again, I think any opportunity that we have to enshrine good practices is really important. So the ability to not just hear from council on this, but to hear from community, to hear and be able to have access to the attorney to be able to help us digest what's being proposed. I think those are common good practices, and for us to be selected as stewards for this program, I think it's important to take the long view and see where we can enshrine those good practices. So I think everything everyone has mentioned, I think so far, are all really good, both valid concerns and valid points. And I know this can be a difficult conversation, but I think, the way I try to see this in my role here is like making sure that we are creating the structures for the next committee group or committee members to be able to have a good building block to work with staff in the future on these programs in partnership with community. So I just want to just reflect just hear what I'm hearing from other folks. I think these are all good, valid points.
So, folks, we're scheduled to take a break at 7, a few minutes after. Want to just check in. I know, Ramphis, you just mentioned wanting to hear from everyone. Do folks want to take a break and come back, or do you want to do a quick sort of round robin? What are you thinking, Ramphis and Megan? Because I know we do have our dashboard preview. Vanya Fong, our data analyst, will join us in a little bit to walk us through that. But want to also see sort of what you all want to do.
I mean, maybe it makes sense right now to do a brief, if we can, quick temperature check while we're on the theme and then take a break. I mean, I think we've heard a little from some of you. I have a flavor of where Paul and Maria maybe are at. Although if you maybe just want to say one sentence each, friends, committee members.
Let's go ahead with that. And Megan, because you're asking for it, I think we've heard from Paul and Maria. So let's start with Megan, and then I'll go to Rob and you next, and then D'Angelo after that. We'll just go around.
Sure, and we can hear another thing from Maria and Paul too. I wasn't trying to say we couldn't, just that I do have a little flavor where you're at. Yeah, and I mean, Ramphis and I collaborated on this, so I think, as I expressed, I have some frustrations, and yet I'm also a pragmatist, and I think that this is a little bit of a medium ground. So with a little more consultation, as Maria discussed, I feel decent about moving this forward.
Okay, Robin.
Yeah, I'm generally okay with this. The way I see this is a speed bump, right? We've had situations where just other ideas or proposals get proposed, and just through short time frames and press and whatever, things get just rammed into us. And I see this as just speed bumps, as traffic control to kind of slow things down and give time for deliberation.
Thank you, Robin. D'Angelo.
I echo a lot of Paul's sentiments. Sorry, I'm having a bit of an issue over here today, but I echo a lot of Paul's sentiments, and there's a wariness of it. But I think with the language changes, that this is something that I can support.
Thank you, D'Angelo, and take care. Okay. Faith.
My initial reservation remains that this is outside of our control, that what City Council does, and I'm concerned about becoming complicit with it in the need to make it slightly better. So that's the overarching concern. But as I mentioned, as kind of Ranfis's response to me early on, that this really does create, in Robin's words, a speed bump to just provide more opportunity for daylight and decision making. If that's our goal, I'm really happy with that goal. What I'm concerned about is the committee continuously feeling obligated to be complicit with city council decisions. And that I don't think serves community. Just the stand, and not that we haven't served community, but the stance of that is what I'm concerned about. But to the extent that language would protect future council or this committee or this committee from just being able to daylight what the issue is in front of city council with more community, or even just in our own public meetings, that's a value. So I can get on board with that value for sure.
Thank you, Faith. Okay, maybe just circle back to Maria and Paul, and then we'll go for about what we'll call. We'll see where we land. Maria first.
Thanks. I've said plenty. Paul, take my airtime.
Well, I think Faith brings up a good point about being complicit, and the reality is they're going to make a change and use the interest income one way or the other. I wouldn't mind hearing more from community. So, I don't want people to think that we've already made a decision that we're going to be complicit, because we haven't had an opportunity to hear from the community yet. And I think we should. So that's probably you've heard my other comments. So I think that's all I'd like to add. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Megan.
I just have a follow-up question, probably one for Faith and then one for maybe Paul and Maria combined. Faith, I appreciate that point, and not necessarily right now, but would love to hear if you have alternative language, or if it's not really a language fix, I guess, to that concern.
Can I just respond to you right now? I don't think it's a language fix.
Yeah.
It's totally a power issue, and one that we're not going to gain by particularly artful language.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, there may be strengthening of language we can do, and yet it won't like fix the issue you're talking
For
about.
sure. Yeah.
And Maria and Paul, my question is more, both of you mentioned community consultation, and just considering we probably will have to convene some sort of lunchtime vote. I'm just curious what you imagine, or what would that look like to you in that sort of 1 month time frame, in a way that would feel kind of meaningful enough.
That's a good point. We don't have a forum established anytime soon to hear from community. I don't know how much they're paying attention to this, to be honest with you, and whether or not we would be able to set aside a time to at least receive written comment that we could review at a meeting. We might have a lunchtime meeting. I think that might be helpful. But when I don't want to put words in Faith's, what she said about being complicit, but when I heard Faith say that, is like, we don't have to say we go along with this. We can also say we object to this. And the city will do what they want anyway, I think. But there might be some benefit to that route too. I just haven't thought about it more thoroughly, but that is an option that we should not sweep off the table.
Okay, I think there's a question then. Thank you, Paul. I think that there's a question for you, Maria, and I do want to honor at least and take a break here. So I want to make sure after Maria that we go to a break. That's okay, folks.
I can't think of an ideal scenario right now to help make anything right. But I do feel like at the minimum, at the end of big meetings like this, or a lot of our meetings, for people who don't follow PCEF closely, it is important that we can easily summarize where we're at the committee, what transpired, what's on our desk right now, so people can follow upcoming actions. I think that's something our committee has tried to do better, has tried to synthesize what happens in these spaces and help prepare the public to understand what happens meeting by meeting. I can't think of what committee communication to the community would look like. But I hope we could think through, because I know for a lot of advocates who showed up this week in person at City Council, I'm not sure how many of them would have expected some kind of action like this after they've celebrated such a big win of feeling like at that hearing, City Council has no more asks of the committee or PCEF. So I think it would be helpful just to communicate what we have here, in case other people want to continue engaging, which I know they will.
All right. Thank you, Maria. Let's do this, folks. Let's take a little bit of shortened break. If we can we come back at 7:18, just so that we don't shortchange, because I suspect, and I'm going to check in Maria and Ramfis with you in the break just to see how you all want to follow this conversation so we can make sure we get to do our dashboard preview too. Okay. All right, y'all. Yeah. I'm seeing folks coming back. Okay, great. So I'm going to send it back to Ramfis and Megan before we turn over to our next agenda item to see where we go here on our prior.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, I just want to, appreciate, I think, just the conversation we had with everyone, and consistently just like amazed and honored just by just like the feedback and just the values always present in the feedback, which is, again, protecting this program, but also making sure each and every step where we're giving a platform and a space for community members to provide feedback. So I think that is, really important and always in alignment with, I think, some of the founding principles document that we created early in the PCEF program. I think the articulation here, I think that Robin provided is, again, this is very much a speed bump, and you just want to reiterate, like, speed bumps have their values. Just to build on this metaphor, it's aimed to create better safety on the road, and I think, we've experienced policy, being thrown out from the hip. And I think what we always want to ensure is like, hey, good policy is thoughtful policy that's engaging community, engaging the folks who are most involved in the program. And so I think, the best I think we can do is enshrine some of that language. Creating that speed bump, I think, is a structural improvement to the program and how we partner and collaborate with council and how council collaborates with us. I think moving, want to build, and I think just take Megan's suggestion as a way to move forward, is that we schedule a lunchtime hour to take this vote. And I think we'll lean on Sam to schedule that. And then in the intermediate moment, we'll also do some touch points with community groups to submit some letters. So meeting, I think, some of the requests here. Megan, anything I missed or anything you would want to add?
No, I think you covered it well, Ramfis.
Right. Well, just one thank you all, and stay tuned. We'll get out a doodle poll for a lunchtime meeting here in the next few weeks. Okay. Let's move things along. And I know that now I'm happy to introduce you all. I know you all have met Vanya in small group meetings, but happy to introduce folks to Vanya Fong, who joined our team a little bit over a year ago as our data analyst. And so we're going to jump into talking about just our dashboard. And so I think maybe Vanya, I want to just see if you're with us or if you can hear us, if you can just chime in. Okay. You're also calling in potentially. Well, I'll start up here. And then you just let me know when you're there. The goal for this meeting, one, is to provide an overview of our phased approach to the dashboard. Provide a preview of the current state of the dashboard, and then gather your initial reflections. I think what we want to just start in acknowledging, this is some of what came out in our work session earlier this week with City Council. I saw Vanya, you just went on mute. So I'll say this and I'll turn it over to you, is that we're still, even on RFP number 1, we're on the tail end, and we've got about 5 or 6 grantees that still haven't closed out our first RFP. We've got, and when we get to RFP 2 and we start talking about our 65, I think 65 or so grantees there, we're in projects that we've got funded. Those are largely about a third of the way through their life cycle. And so there's a lot of data integration, information and collecting, and Vanya's been at the front of that and trying to make sense of our entire data sets. And so we've been fortunate to have Vanya be there, because she's certainly a stickler for good quality, clean data, and it's going to be really critical, and she's going to be critical in terms of helping smooth that infrastructure out as we move forward, particularly as we engage in our strategic programs. But this first body of work reflects our spreadsheet based data forms and what we've been able to gather and have consistent, clear quality data from them. So this is really phase one, but maybe without going too far, Vanya, I want to turn it over to you to see if you want to speak any more on this slide before I turn it to the first slide, and just please introduce yourself to the team. Oh, you're muted. On one side or the other. I think you just muted on your phone. I saw your phone on mute. Try one more time.
Hello?
We got you.
Sorry. Yes.
You're very faint, Vanya.
Yes. I don't have too much to add. Just the high priority and have rigorous data. Part of that process, paid learning process.
Vanya, louder. Vanya, Vanya, we need you to be louder.
That's a really robust level of detail. Really interesting.
Okay, Vanya, when we bring you back in, I'm gonna start driving, but I'm gonna ask you to be much louder, or maybe we tried the calling in on the phone. Let's go for it. So one, I think, as we get into just the dashboard development phases, we are in phase one here. And this is, what you'll see is we're looking at top level metrics for 4 out of 5 of our metrics categories. That's investment, climate workers, and businesses, as well as program stewardship that has available reporting. We will, prior to the release of this first phase, be adding in, and we're planning on adding in our community engagement metrics. We will also be incorporating Q1 of 2024 reporting, and that was just due a week or so ago. So we will be adding that data set in there as part of rolling it out in the middle of summer. So that's really what phase one. And I think then as you get to phase two, that's where we really want to start incorporating the co-benefits, some of the geographic disaggregation, and really dialing how we articulate program beneficiaries, the number of program beneficiaries. A lot of our focus have been on the nonprofit organizations we've distributed funding to, and that's the information we collected, but we're going to start taking it to the next step on who have been the program beneficiaries. And so that's the aim of phase two. And as part of that, really teasing out how we do our broader storytelling and other pieces alongside the dashboard. And so with that, I am going to pause on sharing my screen. And what I'm going to do here is just really drive you all through the dashboard in a bit. So you'll see my screen share stop, and I'm going to pull open the dashboard itself. Pull this open, and you will see. So this dashboard has been developed, and Vanya has developed this on Power BI. And so what this dashboard is it just starts with this landing page that gives folks just a welcome, and what you've seen even since our staff of last preview. This is now there's a glossary of terms which folks can click to and access, and we won't go there, but that taps into our online website. And this just notes sort of this is our progress and disbursement status based on information collected as of December 31st. So that's our last sort of until we get the Q1 of 24 loaded in. That's the data set that's reported here. So once folks tap really into the dashboard, it shows at the high level just total allocated funding. This is a combination of our information between the climate investment plan as well as our community responsive grants we've awarded funding to through date. It gives a number of nonprofit organizations supported through our community responsive grants, the number of strategic initiatives that have been funded, as well as the community responsive grants awarded. And so as you can tell, 2 different words, many nonprofits have multiple awards. Now, in 2 of these, you can drill down, and there's just these hovers in the corner of each of these where it provides just basic information around what's there. And so you can see that each of these, the dashboard will have that sort of interaction where folks will be able to get a little bit more information. Now, once you click on just one of these and dial in, it takes you further to the funding allocations. So what you see on this first page is at a high level, the allocations that have been broken out between our community responsive grants, as well as our strategic initiatives. And if you toggle between allocated versus active, what folks will be able to see is where do we have active contracts or agreements in place to implement programs? And so with our community responsive grants, we have about 136 million in active or completed projects. And our strategic programs, we have about 100 million set aside for programs with active grant or contract awards in place to disperse or administer that funding. Now, for any one of those, folks can further do this drill down. And those instructions on drilling down do exist up here, but there is this diving deeper for folks that want to go deeper. So if you click in community responsive grants and you drill down, folks will be able to see just the overall breakdown across our funding areas and see that across community responsive grants, how much funding has been dispersed for energy efficiency, renewable energy, workforce contract development, and so forth, going across all of our funding areas. And so folks can dive in even one step further and get a sense for within a given program if it parses out. And so within energy efficiency, renewable energy, of that breakdown, 68 million is for our community responsive grants, 16 million is for cooling Portland. So you can really start working your way back up. But I'm going to go back to, and that allocated is speaking to, so that's sort of the level. And this is responsive ultimately to some of the program audit early on, where the audit was specifically saying we needed to break down our information by how much we've allocated and across all of our funding areas. And so that was in part responsive to that piece of feedback. Now, if you click next and move through, then you pivot over and you move and you get into a chart that just gives the breakdown of the number of community responsive grants awarded across our different both funding areas, as well as what this organizational capacity building is capturing as our mini grants program largely. So you can just get that information as well. And if you were to click down further, you'd see that this is really entirely speaking to our mini grants. You can go right back up. You can drill down in our energy efficiency, renewable energy grants, again, get a sense for what that breakdown is. Again, right now it's fairly simple, but it just gives you a sense that there is that level of moving up and diving down further into the details.
Yeah, and you can click on the blank space in the chart to just totally turn it into a program view instead of drilling down into a specific bar. You right click on the blank space, and then there's an option to see next level, expand to next level. You might have to go back to the original view. Yeah.
So expand to next level like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And that's breaking down our community responsive grants across our planning grants, our implementation grants. And I think you might just be cutting off and missing sort of some of the detail here around the funding areas, right? So there's just different ways to cut this information to understand how our funding has flowed to implementation projects, planning projects, and different funding areas. Okay, any more on this slide that I need to make sure I show?
You can hover over the learn more, which basically takes you to the next slide. But if you hover over it, there's some text that explains what the next slide is.
Hover over the which one?
The learn more button.
Ah, gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, so now that brings us to the next slide. And so here, this gives a little bit more detail around the number of grants that we've dispersed, and specifically how many of those grants have gone to, in this pie chart, organizations that reflect our priority populations. And that's speaking to the entirety of all of our grants. But if you were to click in, you get a little bit of different flavor on our energy efficiency, renewable energy, number of grants to organizations reflecting priority populations, 21, 12 not. If you go planning, you'll see that 32 of our grants have reflected gone to organizations reflecting priority populations. I can tell you, I know this workforce development, we tend to have a higher ratio there. And then you can break that down. Instead of just number of grants, you could break it down in terms of dollar value of grants. So you could similarly look at that on a dollar basis as opposed to just the number basis. And so, and this is going to be obviously important for a lot of our community-based organizations, just to understand how our resources have flowed. Now, if you click to the next tab here, then it moves into our greenhouse gas emissions reductions across the portfolio and across all of our funding areas. And here, this is nice. This is an update here. There's a click to hear from a grantee function, which I'm not going to go there yet, but what that does is it's going to take you over to our website. So that's our first phase attempts to integrate a little bit more of the stories, which at some point will bring them more in line. So what you see here is just and these numbers are actuals based on projects. So there is, I think there was a lot of discussion on having these numbers on the landing page, but we didn't want people to confuse the actuals with what we've allocated, given that these are actuals. So as we get project reporting and project phases are completed, this is how we roll up. This is how we've been tabulating. And as you can expect, most of our emissions reductions have come from our energy efficiency, renewable energy projects, or energy efficiency projects specifically.
And for most of our slides, we combine energy efficiency and renewable energy, but we thought that it's kind of important to highlight the fact that we do have much more energy efficiency currently in our portfolio than renewable energy. And it'll change as our program portfolio grows and changes. But this is just something that we wanted to choose out.
Yeah. And notably, to add to Vanya's point there, specifically, these are actual. So this happens when a project is completed. We do have many community solar projects, other projects like that in the pipeline. And so that's one to say that these are actuals as we get our project reporting in and as our projects get completed. Okay. And so then we get to our workforce development funding. And this is, again, our grant investments in organizations to support workforce or contractor development. And so here you're starting with just we've got a couple toggles here. If we're breaking it down by gender or race, you see the percentages of folks that have completed our training programs. And so you'll see here, 57% women have completed our training programs, or 31% African American or Black folks have completed our training programs. And if you click secure job, you'll see you'll see that here, secure jobs, it's 46% women have secured jobs in our training programs, and 28% have secured jobs. And so let me see, and I think, as you can see, this number here also just gives you the absolute figure: 341 participants completing training, and 150 folks have secured jobs.
And you actually can click on the click here to hear from grantee. It stays on the page. It'll just pop up a story.
There we go. Very nice. As folks can see, Vanya would be driving tonight if Vanya wasn't at a community event and chiming in, but there you go. Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to move to the next second to last page here. So this speaks to just number of contractors directly supported by the program. So we've got 117 contractors. It's more static, but we'll move to the next tab. About 752 hours of contractor support provided. So this is related to our investments in contractor technical assistance and training. And then this is just a figure related to the portion of our resources. So our grant investments oftentimes, as you know, go to nonprofit organizations on our community responsive grant side, and those resources are subsequently contracted out to support entities in actually delivering and implementing the projects. And so here is just sharing that 42% of our community responsive grant expenses. So that's where we capture this figure. It's on our expense line, has been subcontracted out to other organizations or other businesses. And then last but not least is our contractor workforce diversity. And so this is the area where there's probably the most challenges with our data. And we won't get into it, but I think this has been always how do we figure out how we collect the best data and make the most quality data. But at the data we've been able to appropriately collect, feel confident in the quality of the data. We're capturing that about 46,000 contractor staff hours on our projects, about 2 million paid in wages, with an average hourly wage of $41. And there's a toggle here on the page between understanding and seeing the demographic disaggregation of our hours and wages by race and gender. So you can see the hours, and then you can toggle over and see sort of the distribution of wages by those attributes. So I know I'm driving this and it's hard to just visually see this. We still have obviously a little bit more, but what we wanted to do here is just share this with you all, walk through with this, acknowledge the limitations of what we're working with here, And also just to set the stage for the fact that we plan to get this out there so folks can start toggling in through this on their own, and acknowledge that that's going to be that sort of phase one as we refine our data, get more data, update and improve our platforms for sharing this information. So maybe with that, I'm going to say, Vanya, I'm going to turn it to you to see if you've got anything else you want to add before I kind of pause, turn over to the committee members and gather some just initial reflections and then part ways and send people away on their evenings.
The only thing that you'll probably notice, one of the things that you'll notice is not on here is co-benefits, and Sam kind of mentioned this, that this is class for second phase, partly just because a lot of those are at the very detailed funding area level. And in this phase, we're kind of looking more at data that is cross-cutting, applicable across the board to an extent, like that worker data, like the contractor staff data. And then the co-benefits, they really kind of get really detailed. So there's definitely some thinking to be done to make sure it continues to be accessible, but also getting to the detail that folks are interested in.
Thank you, Vanya. I think, and maybe I'll just step in and share, co-benefits are challenging as folks know this, and yet we know that there are some that are going to be more clear, like where we've got number of households where we've added cooling to a household. But then some of them are going to be a little bit more challenging. And so we're still trying to figure out, because this co-benefits, again, are not so cross-cutting or across projects, that they may be specific to a specific type of installation or specific type of measure or specific type of project. And so that's still something we're trying to make sense of how we display that information. Okay. So I think with that, Vanya, thank you. You're not off the hook just yet, but I want to turn it over to committee members to see if there are just initial reflections, questions, and so forth. Megan.
Well, I will note that Faith shared some enthusiasm in the chat box, so I'll just verbalize that about just being excited to see it, and a question about when we'll be able to share the beta version. So yeah, do you want to answer that first?
Yep. Thank you for the enthusiasm and note on that. Two, we plan to get it out about early mid-July.
Okay, cool. And you gave us a chance to preview this, so I've had a chance to ask other things. And I'm glad you talked about the co-benefits, because I would hope, even if we don't have data, I wonder if we could even just put a spot on there to even talk about like a story there or something, or the types of co-benefits, even if we don't have data, just because it's such a big part of our PCEF story. So that's just a thought. But a couple other ones, I was at the city council work session the other day, and there were a lot of questions about climate impacts by dollar and by project. And I think as you went through, we are not offering it in any of that breakdown. Am I misunderstanding how you showed any of that?
Here, no,
can you go back to the climate benefits
absolutely.
one?
There we go.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's a translation. So here we go. If you hover over this little extra additional information, you'll see that it does provide there is an equivalency of this is equivalent to removing 1,300 gas-powered vehicles.
But it's not like per dollar or per project or per, that's just the sum total across all, right? I guess you could
that's
do
going
the
to achieve
math.
the day. You could do the math.
Yeah, so we may get people like that. Might be good for us to own the narrative rather than let people draw conclusions, which is this is really expensive per dollar, which I think is what people are going to do because we're doing it differently. So I wonder if there would be value to us owning the narrative, like why this maybe costs more than a comparable program you might, or I don't know. So I don't have an answer, just that's a thought. And then another thing on climate is this is all about, I think this maybe would go into the co-benefits thing, but I feel like we're not really touching on climate resilience. We have climate, mostly greenhouse gas reduction. I guess we have a little bit of the energy efficiency upgrades, but it's just a thought, kind of maybe that would go into the co-benefits, is who's more resilient now to climate change, because that's another thing we're doing. And then two more comments. Under the there was like some sidebars where you had like where, you know, we have a lot of capacity building grants because of the mini grants. And I just wonder if, is it possible for these bars to have like multiple colors in them to show the breakdown or something? Because I think, you know, I also want to own that narrative. Like, yes, it's there, you can see it, but like, I can imagine a critic being like, oh, they just spent a lot of money on capacity building, which I'm proud of, but like, yeah, I just wonder, like, if we could show breakdown, like have the bar have colors in them to show breakdown. And part of me also wonders if those are breakdownable by topic, like regenerative agriculture, energy efficiency at all, or are they just more like they're not topicable?
If
Some of them, and many of them actually touch multiple funding areas, or some of them kind of are pretty general. But we can go back. There has been an exercise to try to like tag them into categories. So if that is like really meaningful, we can look into splitting those out.
Yeah, I just didn't remember if they clicked a button when they applied.
No, we kind of have to tag them after the fact.
Got it. And then the last one, you know, I mentioned this at our meeting too, but I think there's one about priority populations that I just feel like needs reframing because it's really just about leadership of the org, which is just only one way that we're benefiting or serving priority populations. Because we also do it through direct impacts. And maybe it's hard for me to read all the text quickly up high, so maybe it was kind of clear.
we try to do, Megan, I'll say one, we try to do a better job there. And this is on, you know, prioritizing our grant awards and just showing how our grant awards are distributed organizations. But you're right. I think the biggest thing that folks are interested in is who fundamentally is benefiting directly from the projects. And that's going to take a next level of work. And that's something we're teasing out. How do we appropriately capture that information? What level of granularity are we capturing that? What's the right balance so that we're getting quality information? So that's some of that direct beneficiaries is that next phase, but this is information we've already had because it functions at the top level when organizations apply.
So maybe when we share the beta, there's like some narrative that's like explains what we don't yet have, but we hope to. And we could go to Ranfees and Robin. I don't want to take the whole time.
Ranfees.
Megan's a tough follow-up. I'll just, Manny, I just want to sort of just share deep appreciation for your work on this. You know, PCEF is a challenge in that you're trying to tell a story through data sets that covers multiple areas. So, you know, I appreciate that. And like any good editor, you got to make tough decisions, what data you're presenting and how to present it. And so just want to give you just a deep appreciation. And, you know, I think for like the broader public, you know, I think just as this goes live, you know, I just want to remind folks like, hey, like this is very much a phase as you described it, Sam. And I think like all data, like I think, you know, this isn't fully complete of everything that we do. And I think as long as folks are aware of that and you know, to see this as a partnership with PCEF team about how we better tell the story from a data set, I think will be very valuable, not just for the program, but even for the broader public. One outcome I hope, you know, once this goes live and we go through different phases is, you know, and my interest a lot is on contractor and workforce diversity, is that we see some pride from some of these projects to be like, hey, like I want to see project by project being displayed. Like I want to take pride in what we did in driving clean energy jobs at a project level. So I'm not advocating, hey, let's go just shoot us some data sets from a very project specific level. But you know, I think that's the culture of data is it tells a story. It doesn't replace the story. And I hope the story that we overall tell is that PCEF is a program that's providing value throughout the entire city at a very specific community level. And I think that is a very instrumental piece. And I can start to see what we're doing here. So yeah, just deep appreciation, and I'll kick it over to Robin.
I am having trouble finding my mute.
We can
I
hear
don't know
you.
why. Yes. Okay. So first, this is fantastic. I can't wait until I play with it. You know, I kind of like glazed when Sam was going through the slides because I can't watch this stuff. I got to play around with it. I got to get my mouse and my fingers dirty. So eager to try, play around with the beta whenever that is available. And I'm sure I'll have more questions. I just want to plus one the stories, the narratives. I think this data is fantastic, but at the end of the day, these are benefits to humans, right? These are Portlandians, whatever you want to call us. And I think that's missing from all these numbers and data. And I think it would be really fantastic, and I know this might be a version 2, but if you can kind of sprinkle some stories, into some of these stats, right? And you click onto workforce development, and it would great to hear a story about how Apprentice went through a PCEF funded program, and that they helped install a community solar at a PCEF funded community solar installation, and that their career is in a good trajectory, or how households have benefited. So I think this data yearns for that human side story. And maybe capturing co-benefits as a data is tough, but at least you can start telling some of that story as a narrative. And I think that will really add a personal dimension to PCEF's impact. This data is great, but I think that the stories to complement this data could be fantastic. So thank you.
No, Robin, really want to thank you for that feedback, and thank you all for the feedback. I think totally understand what you mean by wanting to get your hands in it. So we'll give you that opportunity here soon. We just got, I think there's some core pieces we want to add, and at the same time, we didn't want to miss this opportunity to drive you all through and get an early sneak peek on where we're going. To your point on stories, one, I should have acknowledged and meant to give a kudos to just also Elizabeth on the team, who's been working alongside Vanya to figure out how do we tell the complex stories and information that we have here and make sense of it. And so we are certainly, and Elizabeth has been working with a lot of our grantees on sourcing and getting those stories. And so that certainly, you're absolutely right, is going to be the phase 2, but even just on this part of it, it's been teasing out how we pull these pieces together and making sense of it. As you all can expect, between 100 some odd grantees, we've got a tremendous amount of information. And because there's not necessarily, there's only a handful of data pieces that cross-cut all of them, it's certainly been a lot of teasing out the trade-offs there. So big just kudos to Elizabeth and Vanya on this as well, Elizabeth in addition to Vanya on this. And with that, I want to see if there's any more questions on this, and acknowledge that we know you all will have to dive into this for sure.
I'll do a quick, can I do a quick response to, thanks Robin for the comments. Yes, I've been working with Elizabeth, and she sent me a couple of stories and been integrating them. Again, there is kind of just like a limited real estate on the dashboard itself. So only so many buttons and click here to hear grantees that I can integrate, but definitely do hear the desire to sprinkle some of those in. So we have 2 buttons like that right now. We might add 1 or 2 more, but we also recognize that a dashboard won't do justice to all of the stories that we have, because we have so many. So it's really figuring out which ones to elevate and where to save all of the other great stories.
Yeah. Megan.
Well, my comments like a little bit of a next step or aside, so maybe I'll save it if somebody else wants to, somebody else has something more specifically on the dashboard.
You got it. Go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, I saw Eric Engstrom's comment in the chat box about being able to tell the outcome story will be the emerging theme of the next year. And so obviously the dashboard is part of that, but I also do want to keep talking as a committee about telling our story more regularly in the news. And to that end, Sam, I've been like, we need to get a PCEF field trip happening this summer with media and elected officials and the 9 committee members and staff to see some of these projects in action, because and maybe we can get pictures and stories for the dashboard at that field trip. But and I'm sure there's other ways, but I think like, yes, that we are in an era where we need to be showing our story. So I hope we can I'm happy to help with the field trip, or I'll just keep nagging about it. One of the
No,
two.
it's actually, it's certainly, it's on the list. How about this? It's on the list. It's making it, so it is absolutely on the list. And it's something we have thought about and figure out what's the way in which we can engage our electeds alongside you all to, but it's going to take a little bit of work. So it's on the list. It's there. I'll leave it there. There's a few things that have gone in front of us, but that's, I know that Ramfis has been one that certainly suggested that, just in terms of getting more familiar and connected to the project. So it's there, and we'll keep chewing on that and finding, as part of the work that Elizabeth has been doing and other staff have been doing with teasing out the stories that are ready and ripe for telling with our grantees. It's giving us a flavor of which ones are going to have, which ones are ready for that kind of field trip. So we'll circle back on that.
Yeah, like I ride my bike past some housing thing every day, and I'm like, what's going on? The PCEF signs on it. And yeah, so just kind of that example, I think it can really ground us in the on-the-ground work. I think us committee members don't get to see that much.
Absolutely. It's making me wonder where you're biking by, but we've got a few of those banners around. We're working on getting more.
Right by Broadway Bridge. Forget the name of it.
That's the Albino One project. That's Albino Vision Trust project.
And this is so at some point we're going to have a dashboard about how much businesses we're supporting through buying signage.
Maybe we might just share that one. Okay. All right, y'all. Well, I want to see if there's anything else, and just again, thank you to Vanya and Elizabeth on this, and then and you all as well this evening. It's obviously wonderful weather, and we're going to keep coming into it. So just want to thank you all and see if there's any closing comments before we part for the evening. All right. Well, then I'll give my big kudos to Faith for her testimony today at City Council. It was a good session. Thank you all.
Thanks all. Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. We'll see you later.